share some things with you today or speak to you from my heart. It amazes me how many times that I feel like I'm preaching to myself. How many times I need to hear what I'm trying to say to someone else. And I want to begin by saying whatever is happening in your life right now, whatever it is you're going through, whatever it is that you're dealing with, wherever you are with your life and in your life, I want you to know that you have gifts, you have abilities that can make you fruitful and productive. Too many of us live in our past and in our failures and in the negative things that hinder us from doing what God desires us to do with the gifts and the talents and the abilities that He has given us. When God sees that you're using the gifts that He has placed in you wisely, when He sees that you are allowing graciously what He has put in you to function and to work, when you are generously giving of what God has entrusted into your keeping, whether you can sing a song, whether you can teach a class, whether you can just encourage somebody with your words, whether you can look pretty to make somebody feel attractive, or whatever you need to do, when you take your gifts and you share those things, I promise you this, He will anoint what He has gifted you with, and He will help you to forget the pain of the past that haunts you. But so many people get stuck in their pain. They get stuck in their problem. They get stuck in the past of what has so come at them that stops them. The thing I would say to you is that before God can deliver you from the land of your affliction, the best way to get out of there is to become productive and excellent where you are. Now, I'm going to look at the story of a guy that most of us know. You've heard this story, Joseph, a man in the Bible. In the story of Joseph, he goes through a series of events, and most of us know the story of everything that happened in Joseph's life. He was a dreamer, and he had a big dream, and he dreamed great dreams, and he was in a house where his brothers were not dreamers. They were just average folks, I guess, and they didn't like this dreamer. This boy saw every great big things happening, great things manifesting, and all this was going on, and his brothers sold him into slavery. He gets into slavery, and he begins to do good, and he gets to working in Potiphar's house, and his Potiphar's wife accuses him of things and threatens him because he wouldn't do what she wanted to do, and he ends up in prison again. And so he's in the middle of prison, and I'm jumping way ahead of myself, but I want you to catch where I'm at and where I'm going with this. And while he's in prison, while he's in the middle of affliction, pain, suffering, he's chosen to lead the whole country, the whole nation. Now, I'm using this as a kicking off point today because in the story of Joseph and the naming of his sons, I personally believe, you have the right to your opinion, but I personally believe that he got it backwards in how he named his sons. He had two sons before the famine came, and the two sons' names were Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, there's an important message here that I want to try to get across, but in Genesis 41, is the story of Joseph throughout the 40s, but the man of God that God definitely blessed, Joseph, was a man who overcame his negative past. I mean, when you look at what he was dealing with his brothers and being sold into slavery, when you look at being falsely accused, being in prison, and you know, you got to understand, Joseph, like many of us, have been born with some deficit. Does anybody here feel like you have a little bit of deficit in your life from how you was born? We were born with some affliction. We were born with some disability. Do you realize that many of us inherit certain things that we never chose to have? Now think with me for just a moment. Just think about this. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose your siblings, your brothers or your sisters. You didn't choose your race. You didn't choose the social conditions in which you were going to be born. You know, I remember coming home one day and saying to my mom and dad, "Are we poor?" Well, I didn't know it till somebody told me. Why? Where I was raised. We didn't know any better. We knew what we had. We had what we had. I didn't pick who my parents would be. I can remember going through some times thinking, boy, I wish so-and-so's parents were my parents because they let them do anything they want to do. And I can't do that. My parents won't let me act like that. My parents won't let me behave that way. Man, I wish they were my parents. Now, today, I'm glad they're not. But at that time, that's where I was. That's what was going on. So, just let me say to everybody here, how many of you have a little bit of damaging baggage in your history? Look at somebody and say, I think he's talking to you. Here's what I want to say to you this morning. If I'm asking you a question and you've got some damaging baggage in your history, do you have to carry that baggage with you forever? God says, no, you don't. I'll never forget, we were over in the other building one night, and we had an evangelist come in here, and he was preaching, and he said, God wants to deliver everybody here from cigarettes that's smoking. He said, everybody bow your head and close your eyes. And I bowed my head and I closed my eyes, and he said, now everybody here that wants delivered, throw your cigarettes down front. There were 31 packs of cigarettes in the altar. And he told me to pick them up. I was never so tempted to smoke again in my life as I was that night. But I thought to myself, there's a lot of baggage in this house. Some of you here get delivered that night? Huh? Listen to me. Your past shouldn't determine your future. Your future determines your past. Every day I get up, I'm writing history. Notice what I said. I'm writing his story, history, his story in my life. And every day I get up and I say, what are we going to do today? Because tomorrow, I can't change today. But today, I'm writing his story, history. Your past, the baggage, should not be in charge of your future. Now, listen carefully to me. Joseph's background was a series of brutal and unjust events. Joseph didn't get anything he deserved. If there was ever anybody who wanted to have a bad attitude, listen to me say this. If you got a bad attitude flipping hamburgers at McDonald's, you're going to have a bad attitude as CEO of a large company. Why? Because you are in charge of your attitude. The circumstance is not going to dictate how you're going to handle what you have. So Joseph is a guy that had a series, multiple unjust, brutal events. Kidnapped, sold into slavery, as I've already said, falsely accused of a crime, thrown into jail, born into a family of underachievers. He was a boy with dreams, and he had all these dreams, and his brothers didn't know what to do with him. He didn't choose his siblings, and they wanted rid of him. David was in the same kind of a scenario. If you remember when Samuel was coming to get a king, he looked at all of the boys, and the 7 guys passed through him, and David was going to be the king, and he didn't even get invited to the inauguration. His own family didn't think he was capable. They did not believe that he would even be someone who was there. So you don't have to tell me what is against you. You don't have to tell me all the things. You've got baggage. Everybody has baggage. But Joseph was a dreamer who suffered his brother's wrath even though he really didn't do anything wrong. He just tried to share his dream. Now, during the time after he got called to lead Egypt, to be second in command, during that time, before the famine came, during that time, he had 2 sons who were born to Joseph and his wife. In Genesis 41, beginning at verse 50, it says, "And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar's priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house." Now think about that. He's named his firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. Verse 52. "And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction." Now, here we have Joseph, and he names the firstborn, "I have forgotten. My past is gone." He names the second one a name about the future and the blessings. Now, Joseph's dream that he had dreamed that his brothers put him out for about people bowing to him and all of the things that he saw had come true. The dream that God had given him and the dream of having a family and his sons had come true. And Manasseh, which means to cause to forget. Think about this. Manasseh means to cause to forget. It means to be delivered and released from the painful memory of a negative past. Let me give that to you again. To be delivered and released from the painful memory of a negative past. Now, when Joseph named Manasseh that name, he had already been delivered from his past. He had already been delivered from all the things that had happened, but that's what he named his firstborn son, and he had been released from all of the consequences of everything that had happened to him. His brothers sell him into slavery. God turned all of that around to his advantage. And Joseph called it, listen, he called it the state of forgetting. That's what one of the passages talks about Joseph calling it the state of forgetting. Now, listen to me say this clearly. Forgetting doesn't mean you have no recollection. Let me say it again. Forgetting doesn't mean you have no recollection. It means that the events of the past no longer influence you. Even though you might remember them, they no longer have any pain in your life or influence you in a wrong way. Some of you, even though you can remember, need to forget some stuff. Help me, Lord. So, Joseph said, God has caused me to forget my past. God has caused me to forget my past. Now, the second son, his name is Ephraim. Ephraim means, listen to this, fruitful, productive, prosperous. Joseph gave him this name, his second son, this name because God had made Joseph prosperous, productive, and fruitful in the land of his affliction. He names his first son Forgetful. Forget it. God caused my past to be gone. And his second son, he named Manasseh, which is about prosperous, productive, and fruitful. Now, he said, prosperous, productive, and fruitful in the land of my affliction. Let me say it to you again so you catch it. In the land of my affliction. Think about this. Not delivered from affliction, but right in the middle of what was negative, what was wrong, what has caused him the most pain, right in the middle of the nation that would try to imprison him and destroy him, God made him fruitful. Can I tell you where God's going to make you fruitful, prosperous, and blessed? In the land of your affliction. See, I think that Joseph got his sons backwards. I don't think he forgot what happened and then became prosperous. I think in his prosperity and in his blessing and in seeing God using him in his life, the sting and the pain of what happened to him, he could recognize that it was there, but it was gone. Because if you study his life, he went back when his brothers came. He fully remembered everything that happened. But it no longer affected him. See, today, I can't change one thing that's happened in your life. I can't change your past. I can't change what's happened to you in days gone by. But I can tell you, if you'll focus today on what God's calling you to do, and you start doing what God has gifted you to do, and you start walking in the blessing of God and the prosperity of God and the power of God, all of a sudden, what has hindered you and afflicted you will be gone. And it's quiet. See, here's what happens. We expect just the opposite. Here's how we pray. Lord, if you'll get me out of this mess, then I'll be prosperous. And I'm saying to you today, if you become prosperous in the mess, you will come out of the affliction. What are you going to do with what you got? The greatest book my daddy ever gave me was a book entitled, What Are You Going to Do with What You Got? I can remember time and again Dad saying, you know, I wished I'd have had this and I wished I'd have had that. But son, I don't have any of that. You're responsible for what God has given you, and I've done the best that I know how, and you can do anything God tells you to do. And I don't have a problem looking at you today and saying, you don't have to get out of your situation to get where you need to go. In your affliction, in your struggle, in your battle, God will help you. See, I believe Joseph got it backwards. Manasseh first, then Ephraim. Joseph was saying, God will deliver me from my past, then he will make me productive and fruitful. Now, Pastor, how do you get this? Well, I'm about to prove this to you from Scripture, why I believe this. So, you know the story of Joseph. Great things happen in the land. Prosperity takes place. There's going to be a famine. He makes so much wealth for Egypt. There is so much that he has. He is blessed in so many ways. And he became the leader of the nation from the prison. He wasn't into prison saying, Lord, if you'll get me out of here, I'll do something big. No, he started doing what he needed to do right in the prison. But when he takes his two sons, I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but just I want you to see this, and I want you to catch this. But when Joseph goes to his father with his sons, after his brothers come to get what they got, he takes his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he goes to his father. And I want you to read what happens here in Genesis chapter 48. In Genesis 48, verse 8 and 9, it said, Then Israel was Jacob, saw Joseph's sons and said, Who are these? And Joseph said to his father, They are my sons whom God has given me in this place. And he said, Bring them to me, and I will bless them. Goes on to talk about how his eyes, he was old, he couldn't see, and Joseph thought he was making a mistake, but when he comes over in verse 13, and it says, And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. Then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, guiding his hand wittingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. Now, here's what you've got to understand. The firstborn was the one that would get the right hand. The secondborn would get the second. The right hand, Manasseh, was the one who was the forget. He caused me to forget my past. Then the left hand, Ephraim, was the one who was prosperous and blessed in everything that he goes. And he comes before his father, and he brings them with them in his hands the right way so that his dad can just reach out and touch him. But when his dad gets ready to touch him, he crosses his hands and he puts his right hand on the younger and his left hand on the older. Jacob don't know what to do. So down in verse 17, read with me. Now when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, By you Israel will bless, saying, May God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. And thus he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Now, Jacob, Israel, knew exactly what he was doing. Now, here's what's happening. God is giving you and I insight in overcoming and conquering our negative past. Jacob said, This is how Israel is going to be blessed. I'm going to bless them. I'm going to prosper them. I'm going to take care of them where they are. And when I do, they will forget their past. Help me. I believe God's saying, if I bless you, I'm going to make you fruitful. I'm going to make you productive. And when I make you fruitful and productive, you're going to forget the pain of your father's house. Some of you right now are stuck in pain, and you don't know how to get past it. I don't know what to do with the pain and the problems and the struggle that I'm in. So we're praying, Lord, if you will forgive me and let me forgive you and the world and everything that's happening and all that's going on, Lord, if you will forgive me for all of this, then I can become productive and prosperous and blessed. And through Jacob, the Lord was saying to Joseph, you got this thing reversed. When you get blessed, when you get productive, when you start doing what I have caused you to do, all of a sudden you'll look around and you'll have forgiven everybody. Oh, I realize I'm preaching something that we don't get, because here's how we do it. When I get over this, I'm going to do something great for God. When I get free of my past, when I get free of my pain, when I get free of my toil, when I get free from my rejection, when I get free from my hurt, when I get free from poverty, when I get delivered from this situation, then the Lord will make me fruitful. We're trying to have deliverance before we have prosperity. You can't fix it anyway. So don't think that you can walk away from something and then get productive. If you will get productive where you are, you'll forget where you've been. I tell you what, I just couldn't do it. I just had so many problems, I tell you. You know, if I'd have had different parents, if I had a different wife, if I had a different town, I tell you, if I had something different, I could do something great for God. Hello, fool. God chose you the way you are. God made you the way He made you. Quit being foolish. I knew they wouldn't shout me down today, Lord, but I've been in this situation before. Listen to what I'm trying to say to you. How many people are sitting around waiting on God to deliver them, doing nothing? Just waiting. Remember, we all inherit some problems. We all inherit some challenges. We all inherit some deficits in life, conditions over which we have absolutely no control. And there are people who are sitting around waiting on, expecting their problems to be solved before they get on with their lives. God is saying, I can make you fruitful right where you are. I can bless you right in the middle of the circumstance. If you'll do what I'm telling you to do, you'll get so blessed, you'll look around one day and you'll realize you have forgotten where you've been. Help me, Lord. You know, God is saying, I'll make you fruitful first. When I bless you, your past will no longer influence you. If we want deliverance first, we want to win the lottery. So that when we win the lottery, then we think all of our problems will vanish before we start. If you win the lottery, you're going to have more problems than you know what to do with. So here's the moral of the story. This is where I'm trying to get to, and this is what I'm trying to say. If you want to forget your negative past, if you want to put what's hindering you, what's paining you, what's bothering you behind you, then you need to begin being productive and using your skills and your abilities to achieve victory right where you are. The reward of your victory helps you leave your memories in the dust. We say, deliver me and I'll do great things. And God says, do great things and I'll deliver you. Lord, if you'll anoint me, I'll do great things for you. He says, if you'll do great things for me, I'll anoint you. But I ain't going to anoint you to sit around and do nothing. I ain't going to anoint you to sit around and have a pity party about how bad it is and what you're going through. I'm not going to bless you if you're focused on what you can't do. I want you to get up and do something for me, and watch what I will do. I will get involved in what you do. I will start helping you do what needs to be done. I will get involved in what your business is. I'll get involved in what's happening. But as long as you want to sit around and murmur and gripe and complain, I'm not going to anoint you to murmur and gripe and complain. I'm going to anoint you to succeed and do something with your life. People come to me and say, you know, so-and-so, they're talking about you. I said, well, that means they're leaving somebody else alone. You know, people are saying, do you know what people... No, I don't, and I don't really care. The only people they're not talking about is somebody who ain't doing anything. Well, but I tell you, it's so tough. People talk about me. People talk... Yeah, because you're doing nothing. Do something, and it's going to get worse. How did he do that? God did it. Why did he do that? God told him to do it. You want to forget your past? Start doing what God has called you to do. God says, this is Stuart Farley's interpretation. God says, get off your behind and do great things and I'll anoint you. As long as you sit around, waiting on God to do something for you before you do something, you will never do anything for God. Pastor, how do you get this? It's called sow and you will reap. What do you mean? Joseph was fruitful despite his enslavement. Joseph was in prison, but in prison he served. In prison he organized. In prison he practiced excellence wherever he was found. First it was at Potiphar's house. He was excellent. Then he was excellent in jail. He didn't say, boy, if I ever get out of jail, I'll do something. No, he did something where he was. He'd show up on time. He did everything he was told and then some. He took the initiative. He identified. He solved problems without being asked. Finally, the leader of the country said, put this guy in charge. He's the one that's in charge. The answers are coming from prison. Put this guy over everything because he's the one who knows what to do. He can run everything. What come first? Productivity and fruitfulness before the forgiveness ever came. Now, here's what I'm trying to say to you this morning. The Lord wants to transform you right where you are. Please get what I'm trying to say to you today. Well, what's got to change for God to do something in my life? What's got to change is your attitude about the fact that He's wanting to change you right now where you are. You can get up and walk out of this place a different person right now. He wants to transform you now where you are. Not someday, somewhere, somehow. If this happens, He wants you to leave here today knowing I'm going to do something fruitful, productive for God. Now, how are you going to do that? You got to use what you got. You remember the story of David going to get Goliath? And Saul wanted to put his armor on him. Saul wanted to give him all these things. And David said, I can't use all that. What do you got? I got a slingshot. But I know how to use what I got. Listen to me, guys. Don't wait. You must begin with what God has given you. Can I help you with something? God is never going to respond to your self-pity and come down beside you and say, you really aren't much. I just am not very good. I got flaws. I got faults. I can't do it. God's not going to come down and sit beside you and say, can I join your pity party with you and have pity on you with you? Let's me and you talk about how big of nothing you are. God knows better. He is not going to get involved in self-pity. Let me give you an example. What he will respond to is obedience. You just start doing it. I'm just asking, whatever God tells you to do today, if you'll do what He tells you to do, He'll respond to that. He's not going to respond to your pity party. Now, let me give you an example. I'm going to close, but let me give you an example of this. Let's suppose you've got a grain of corn and you're hungry. If I want the grain of corn that I have to feed me, how much do I have to pray and how long do I have to pray over that grain of corn before it can feed me? I can spit on it. I can shake it. I can confess it. But if I want the grain of corn to feed me, what do I have to do with it? You got to sow it. You can't pray for the food to come from the grain because the grain of corn, if you sow it, will produce many, 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 many times what it is. Now follow me. No matter how long you pray over a grain of corn, no matter what you do with it, the grain isn't going to grow. Let me help. You can anoint it with oil and bless it. You hear me? Yeah, you can do anything you want to do with it. You can take that grain and put it in a jar of oil. But you got to line that seed up with God's principles and God's words, listen to me, you can cry, you can complain, you can blame it on the atmosphere, you can blame it on the ozone layer, you can blame it on global warming, you can blame it on anything you want, but that's not it. What's the principle? If you want to grow, what do you got to do? You got to plant the seed. Real simple promise. Real simple principle. Can't be changed. Faith without works is dead. So I'm going to ask you, how long are you going to stay in your past? How long are you going to allow your affliction, your failure, your misery, your problem, your struggle, your battle to be in charge of your life? Plant it, it will grow. Sow it. Everybody wants to bargain with God. God, if you'll do this, then I'll do that. My challenge to you today is really simple. Quit saying, God, if you'll get me out of this, then I'll do something for you. And here's my challenge. Get up today and say, God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, I'm going to walk out of here today with you in my life. And with you in my life, and you a part of my life, there's absolutely nothing I can't do. I want to be productive for you. I want to be blessed for you. I want to be prosperous for you. I want to do something for you. I want you operating in my life. And just like the first time you got saved, you thought you gave your life to Jesus, but you had nothing to give. What you did is you invited him into your heart and into your life. And he came into your life, and he began to change things for you. Listen to me. When you accepted Christ, if you'll let him run your life, he can put our lives together. Get out of his way. Let him do it. Let him do what he wants to do. Make the decision that you're going to be fruitful and productive right where you are. Lord, if you called me to some big city, to some big town with some great place and facility, I could do great things for you, but I'm stuck here. Well, where do you think he wants me productive? Right here. And he wants you productive right here with us. Look at somebody right now and say, let's get productive. Go ahead. What are you going to do with what you got? If you're sick today, I want to challenge you to start praying for somebody. I want you to go and pray for somebody before you leave here right now. If you're struggling financially, you take something you got and you try to help somebody else with it. You try to bless somebody else. I have people all the time come and tell me, say, you know, when I win the lottery, I'm going to give $1 million to the church. And you won't give a nickel. You won't give $5. This church has given several $1 million away to other ministries, but we do it 10% at a time, and then give offerings above that. And over the years, it mounts up, and it mounts up, and it mounts up, and it mounts up. And the person waiting to win the lottery is still stuck in their mess. Quit looking at everybody else and telling them what's wrong, and start being productive right where you are. Lord, I thank you for this service. I thank you for this people. I thank you for a body of believers who want to do everything that you have called and purposed them to do. Lord, my attitude is not to hurt or to harm, but to encourage and to strengthen people to become productive right where they are. Maturity is about producing more than you can consume. So, Lord, I just encourage you to produce some productive people in their situation and their circumstance. If you're here and you're dealing with addiction, I'd encourage you to try to help somebody get set free. You're struggling with finances, I'd encourage you to try to see how you can help somebody. You're struggling with sickness, I'd try to encourage you to help somebody else. Where you are, try to be productive and see what God will do. Stand with me, would you please?